So you also wrote Daylight Robbery, How Tax Shaped Our Past and Will Change Our Future, about the history of taxation. And it's fair to say you're a fan of the land value tax. Well, you may have heard that our council in Croydon, like a few others, has declared what is de facto bankruptcy recently. So we wanted to ask your thoughts on how local councils should be funded.
Well, one of the observations I made in Daylight Robbery, and by the way, you design a society by the way that you tax it. And if you're looking for patient zero is the trope in a zombie film where the virus originated. And if you're looking for patient zero, how we fix broken Britain, well, the answer is to just throw away the tax system and start again. And at the moment, we have, huge income tax, and we don't tax assets hardly at all unless there's a sale. We tax the dividends on assets, but we don't tax assets unless there's a sale and there's a capital gain to be taxed. And if you're a man or a woman starting out with nothing, all you have is your labour, and we tax it relentlessly and heavily. And when you tax labour and you don't tax capital, it's inevitable that society will become imbalanced in favour of capital. So that's, the cause of the inequality gap is our tax system. And tax keeps growing. And if I were to ask you what the most expensive thing you ever buy, or I'll ask you, what's the most expensive thing you ever buy in your life?
So I might have heard you say this before, but it's government, of course.
Well, yeah. I mean, people always say a house, but it's not. It's your government, and over 50% of everything you ever earn will be taken from you in taxes over the course of your life, and more if you include the inflation tax. But so tax has grown, and it keeps growing. The tax system gets ever bigger and ever more complicated. And as a result, government keeps expanding. But what has also happened, especially in the UK, but it also has happened in America, what is the collection of taxes used to be local. Many more taxes were collected locally. Whereas now, local taxes have actually gone down over the last, say, 100 years. Especially in America. In 100 years ago in the States, 50% of revenue was collected locally and 50% was collected at the federal level. But here in the UK, I pay on this house, I don't know what it is, 1,500 quid, say, in council tax a year. So, and I pay, a heck of a lot more than that in federal taxes, income taxes, VAT and all the other taxes I pay. So a much smaller level of taxes collected locally, and one of the reasons why the amount of tax that's collected locally has come down is that it's hard to collect tax locally because there is more accountability. The local person can say to the person who's collecting the taxes, I've seen how you spent your money, and you spent your money on X, Y and Z, and I don't agree with that. It's one of the reasons why Scandinavia works so well relative to the rest of Europe, is that much more taxes are collected locally. So even though they pay high level of taxes, there's much more accountability because they can see what is happening with their tax money. Whereas here it's collected remotely, you have no contact with the person that collects the tax, they have very little accountability, and there's vast amounts of waste, and services aren't very good. So that's an interesting dynamic, is this movement away from local taxes to centralised taxes. Local government should be funded by local taxes, is the short answer. One of the reasons local taxes are hard to collect is because people have already paid tax at the central level, at the federal level. So they're less inclined to pay large amounts of tax. The other reason is that your income tax, for example, or your VAT is deducted at source. You never actually receive the money. It's deducted and you're not given any choice. Whereas council tax, you can at least refuse to pay it. You have to go to court and all the rest of it, but you have that option. And that's why one of the reasons why Thatcher's community charge poll tax was such a disaster is because all the left-wing activists told everyone not to pay their poll taxes. And because those taxes weren't deducted at source, they proved very hard to collect. And then the whole thing spiraled from there. And one of the reasons why it's so hard to, overthrow the state is we don't have that ability to withhold tax money, which, you know, if you go to a restaurant, you get rubbish service, you can not pay the bill. And I think the same should apply at the government level. If you get a rubbish service, then you should be able to withhold payment. But I'm afraid we are weakened as citizens and we don't have that option.